Welcome to this League of Women Voters Forum for candidates running for the one of 3 Greenfield School Committee seats. I'm Marie Gauthier, President of the League of Women Voters of Franklin County and resident of Buckland. I will be the moderator. Our timekeeper is Charlotte McLaughlin, another League of Women Voters member and a resident of Shelburne. The forum is co-hosted by Greenfield Community Television. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, multi-issue organization that encourages informed, active participation of citizens in government. The League does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. No League members involved in this forum are endorsing any of these candidates. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are holding this forum as a Zoom webinar. Within this format, we are doing our best to emulate a live forum. We were also subject to possible technical glitches, and we ask you, the audience, to bear with us and to especially understand that the candidates may experience sound or screen issues totally beyond their or our control. Candidates have been fully apprised of the format and ground rules. For the benefit of the audience, here is an overview. We'll begin with candidates introducing themselves for 90 seconds each. The order was chosen, the order of the introduction is by ballot order. Then we ask questions in a revolving order that was chosen by lottery. Each candidate will answer each question. The response time for questions is 90 seconds. Rebuttals for individual questions will not be allowed. The questions were prepared in advance by the League of Women Voters and are based on questions collected from the public via email. We will finish with the 2-minute closing statement that's run in reverse ballot order. Welcome to the candidates running for Greenfield School Committee. In that ballot order, they are Susan D. Hollins, Catherine Lynn Martini, Elizabeth Ann Deneve, Glenn William Johnson Musad, and not in attendance, Darrell B. Asenza. We will start with the 90-second opening statement from each candidate. In ballot order, Susan D. Hollins. Susan, please introduce yourself and remember to unmute. Your time starts now.
Hello, thank you for this forum. My name is Susan Hollins. I'm currently on the Greenfield School Committee and I'm running for another term. My primary interest is really having a vibrant education, well-rounded education for all the students in our town that's fee-free. I don't have children in the school or family in the school, so I'm interested in all the children without any type of bias. I've been in the field of education my whole career and involved in the 3 fields of my 3 degrees, which are in music and theater, special education, and school leadership. The school committee, the governing body, makes a lot of decisions, and from my long experience, I think a school committee works best when the people elected to represent the community have different backgrounds, different ages, different ideas, and they deliberate because we represent a community with people of different ages and backgrounds. I personally think it's always useful that somebody on a governing body knows the industry, so that's something I think that I bring to the school district. Particularly, I enjoy school finance and understand school budgeting, and it really interests me that we use our money well. If I'm reelected, you can be assured I will work for a vibrant education program and the wise use of our money and the support of all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Lynn Martini, please introduce yourself and remember to unmute, and your time starts now.
Hi, I'm Catherine Martini. As a Greenfield resident of 15 years and parent of 2 kids in the district, I care very much about Greenfield Public Schools and the education of all our children. Coming from a family of teachers, education is one of the central values that I was raised with. Now, as a parent, and especially as a parent of a child with a learning disability, education is what I spend a huge part of life thinking about and working to achieve. There are many things important to me, but I decided to run first and foremost because I would like to bring our community's attention to the urgent issue of literacy. We need to discuss how our kids are and aren't learning to read and see how this touches on every aspect of their lives and is truly a fundamental matter of justice. I would like to see our schools make a new long-term district-wide commitment to high-quality curriculum and professional development aligned with the science of reading. Second, I would like to ensure our school committee takes action to improve how it engages with the community and communicates. There are important ways in which we can make this governmental body more accessible, more equitable, and more informed about the needs and views of townspeople. Ultimately, I think Greenfield should be able to expect an organized, transparent, respectful school committee that not just hears, but seeks out the people's point of view. Really, that's just democratic. Thank you for turning out tonight, and I hope you'll consider voting for me November 2nd.
Thank you. Elizabeth and Denise is next. Please introduce yourself and remember to unmute. Your time starts now.
Hello, thank you for having me at this forum. I'm Elizabeth Deneve. I am new to Greenfield, a parent of a middle schooler and a Girl Scout leader. I am a fashion designer in town, and I have been a small business owner for almost 20 years. As a new resident, I was immediately struck by the need for more transparency and new energy in our school committee. I'm excited to be running as a slate with two other candidates, Glenn and Catherine, in the hope to bring more progressive use to Greenfield. I decided to run specifically to bring more focus to the needs of the parents and families. I feel that they are not heard. It's an honor to have the opportunity to advocate for educators and the students, and I hope I can help create greater equity and transparency throughout the district. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Glenn William Johnson Musad is next. Please introduce yourself and remember to unmute, and your time starts now.
I'm Glenn Johnson Musad, and I'm running for re-election to the Greenfield School Committee. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and everyone for coming out tonight. What's on the ballot November 2nd? Respect. I will continue to treat everyone with respect in public meetings and emails. Students, staff, parents, and my school committee colleagues all deserve respect, and I will respect everyone. Transparency. I won't just follow the letter of open meeting law because it's the law. I actually believe you deserve to see your elected officials deliberating in public. We work for you, and you shouldn't have to worry about what we are saying on email or behind closed doors. Equity. I will fight to make sure every student gets a great education in Greenfield, regardless of their race, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identification, or ability. Every student should get what they need from the Greenfield Public Schools. Community engagement. I want to hear from you and will fight to make sure the public has a voice at school committee meetings about anything related to our work for you. I will work to increase access so people can share public comment online and in person and know you are being listened to by the people elected to serve you. I ask for your vote November 2nd so I can continue to work for educational equity and increased community engagement with transparency and respect.
Thank you. For our first question, we will start with Glenn. As a reminder, each candidate has 90 seconds to answer the questions. The question is, what are the main reasons you're interested in serving on the Greenfield Public School Committee, and why should we select you? Your time starts now.
The main reasons I am interested in serving on the Greenfield School Committee are that I really care about educational equity. I believe that every young person deserves to get what they need from the Greenfield Public Schools. And I see it as an important role of the school committee to make use of the limited resources we have, smart use, so that we can address the educational needs of our students. But I also believe that school committee members can and should discuss the important and advocate for the broader issues around state and federal funding for education. We cannot solve all the problems needed to get our kids the education they deserve just within the bounds of the Greenfield School Committee. We also need to be fighting for more funding from the state and more funding from the federal government so that we can get the professional development, the excellent teachers, the principals, the leadership development training, the culture work that needs to happen, that we can really use all that we know about how to make public education effective and get the resources we need for our community to make those things a reality for our students.
Thank you. Catherine, you're candidate number 2, so you're next to answer this, and your time starts now.
The reason that I was inspired to run for school committee is because of my personal experience having a struggling reader. And I am accompanied on that journey by 2/3 of parents in Greenfield Public Schools, according to our data. I know on a personal level how the struggle of a child to learn to read can lead to anxiety, depression, and far-reaching life consequences. And for any parent, they fear what will happen to their child if they do not grow up to be a literate adult. So this is my passion and reason for being the present time. I would like to see Greenfield make a wholehearted investment in a comprehensive long-term plan to improve our student outcomes in Greenfield in this particular area. And the other reason that I decided to run was because of changes that I would like to see in the quality of the school committee. I believe that it's important for this school committee to prioritize transparency.
Right. I'll have to cut you off there. So Elizabeth, you are next, and your time starts now.
Okay. Well, it's really quite simple why I want to join the school committee, why I wish to be elected. I wasn't planning on this being part of my journey, but I'm a user of the district. I'm a parent, and right off the bat, it wasn't working. I couldn't get simple things to happen. Phone calls were never returned. Emails were never returned. I had to fight for every little scrap of information I could get from the schools. And this is not what I'm used to and not what I think anyone should expect. And whenever I did get somebody on the phone and asked, why is this the way it is? They said, oh, well, you know, things are just difficult. You have to tune into the school committee. So that's how I learned about the school committee. I started tuning into all of the meetings and learning quite a bit very quickly. I feel like the parents and the students are so important and they're just not heard at all. So I would like to really focus on bringing the public in. And I know that that's hard, but that's the job. You have to understand what the public wants, and you have to be willing to listen to them, and you have to be willing to implement their ideas. But also, we need to negotiate for more funds from the state. There are all kinds of programs that I was told about by other districts that we're not even accessing. So I hope that we can really move forward and embrace all these ideas.
Thank you. Susan, it is you'll end
My turn.
And your time starts.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't planning to run for school committee for another term. I've been so discouraged in my own way in the last year and a half at how things have been going. And the school system has had quite a change in administrators, which is quite stressful. And our families and children have had to deal with the pandemic and going online, which has been stressful. And I think we really need a solid core of effort to pull ourselves back together and put some systems back in place that have eroded. In particular, I think the school committee needs a different tone, and we need to have more teamwork and more communication with schools. If people have watched me over the last couple of years, they'll know that I've brought this up. You know, can we have liaisons to schools? Can we hear more? Can we be more responsive? So I look for a kinder, more gentle, more responsive school committee. I'd like to be a part of that. And we do have money. That isn't our issue. One thing I know how to do is how to create change in school systems. I've done it a while. So I think I felt that I could be of benefit in bringing the school district back to some programs and values that I value. And my time is up, but I think I would be helpful next year creating a better system that we have right now.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with Catherine. That question is, what are the 1 to 3 most important issues or areas of concern you believe the Greenfield School Committee will need to address over the next 2 years? And what unique perspective or skills would you bring to helping the committee address them? Your time starts now.
I think that the school committee needs to provide immediate support to our teachers and our students. As many parents, especially of children in Greenfield High School and Greenfield Middle School, have observed over the last few weeks, there are significant issues with social emotional difficulties at school, contributing to behaviors that make students and teachers feel unsafe. I am glad the district is taking some steps towards providing additional behavioral health support and movement toward restorative justice. But I would like to see those actions be taking place with the urgency that they deserve. And then in the longer term, I would like to see the district make an investment in literacy programming, as I mentioned before. So that will involve the expectation that our superintendent have a vision around that and the forethought to come up with a plan that will be comprehensive and touch on everything that will be required in order to make substantive improvements in our student outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate to answer is Elizabeth, and your time starts now.
I think the first thing that I think is really important is student retention. Lots of parents that I've talked to have chosen to choice out silently without protest. They just choose another district because they're not getting the information or the help that they need from GPS. So that's the first issue. There's a lot of parents that complain, and obviously you can reach out to them, but there's a whole bunch of parents that you never hear from. They're just gone. The other issue I think is behavioral issues. My daughter comes home from school every day and there's horror stories. She has a lot to tell me and it's not good. And I think the third most important thing that really needs to be addressed right away that would help with the other things are the fact that the teachers don't have any aides in their classrooms. They have no help. So the teachers are telling me that they would love to teach certain aspects of their particular subject, but they don't have the time because they're addressing behavioral issues the entire class, and there's no time left to teach their own subject. And when I ask them if they have teachers' aides, they don't, and they're very sad about that. So I think that we need to look at the budget and figure that out pretty much immediately. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Susan, you're next, and your time starts now.
The questions, how do I see the 3 most important issues? I'd say the first for me is communication and culture. In fact, when I ran last time, I said we really need to address the culture. People should welcome coming to school here, working here, and feel really good about that. And I think better communication and style, as Glenn mentioned, respectful style for all people. I think that comes first, and that would include understanding what people need to do their jobs well. The second, I think we need curriculum planning. At the budget meeting recently, I also said we must do something with literacy going all the way up through K to 12 reading. It's one of my touchstone points too. But we need some multi-year planning in curriculum in a lot of areas, so everybody knows what our program is and it's well-rounded and it's working. And third, the key to everything that everyone wants to do is knowing how to use money. That's my particular strength, is understanding all the different pots of money and how they are woven together. And we need multi-year plans for many things like curriculum and technology replacement, staff development, whether it's teacher aides, special ed. We have to do much better financial planning to make the district work. And those are the three areas I think that are the most important.
Thank you. Glenn, you'll answer this question last, and your time starts now.
I think the three most important things that the schools need to address are, first of all, staffing. There need to be adequate staff at all of our schools for the students to have their special needs addressed, to have the paraprofessionals who do such amazing work in the schools, and the teachers, and the staffing essentially is one of the most important things. And I would work on addressing some of the stresses and risks that these staff have been valiantly facing to do their jobs, and try to ameliorate them to be able to attract and retain more staff. I think a curriculum is really important. I was really happy to be part of hiring our new assistant superintendent for curriculum. We can't have the best education without having a consistent curriculum that meets the best standards and best practices. And finally, I think equity is an issue. And one of the ways it shows up is we have elementary schools, which are determined by a geography that kind of pools a lot of the highest needs students together in elementary schools. Students are essentially segregated by class and then thrown together in the middle school, where they have difficulty forming relationships with each other. So I'd like to address having the elementary schools with students being bused to all the different schools.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with Elizabeth. The question is, what is your past or present experience or connection with the Greenfield Public Schools?
Well, as I said originally, I am new here. And when I say new, I mean very new. I've only been here for 14 months, so I've only had 1 year of experience with my child in GPS. I came from a school where I was the secretary of the PTO, and I spent a lot of time working on their budget. Where I came from, that was something that the PTO did specifically for each school. So I have some experience with that. And I was really surprised at what I saw. I was very excited. I thought that I was coming to Massachusetts to experience all the great schools, and it immediately became a problem. So right away, I jumped in to join the PTO. I became very well acquainted with emailing the principal and the superintendent. I tried to be as helpful as possible, but it seemed like getting involved with the school committee was the way to go, specifically to do the most change. So I'm really looking forward to having more experience with GPS, other than the 14 months that I've already had. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Susan, you're next, and your time starts now. I'm sorry, could you restart the timer? She's muted.
Oops, sorry. I came to Greenfield in 2008. I've lived here ever since as this interim superintendent. I was superintendent here for 6 years. I'd say during that time, all 6 years, I worked to update the schools and get us a new high school, rebuild the budget, add in an AP program, coordinate special ed, reduce our choice out, support the arts, bring in more ed assistants, eliminate all the fees for sports, which was an equity issue for me. And I helped establish the Education Foundation. Then I retired. My first career is in music. I'm a pianist. So after that, I volunteered with the music department. When they didn't have an accompanist, I would learn the music and accompany the high school chorus, which I still would do. And I've been on the school committee for about 5 years. So I have a long history with the Greenfield schools, but I've been superintendent in several places. I never think things have to stay the same, and they don't. And I'm interested in governance. What I do bring to the committee, though, is some history. It doesn't help if we spend money on something we did 5 years ago and we saw that it wasn't effective. And I really do understand budget. I know that's not too interesting to lots of people, but it's what drives every single thing that everyone wants to do. And I hope to live here for a long time, and I'll always be involved with the schools in some way. And I hope I serve another term.
Thank you. Glenn, you're up and your time starts now.
I started out being connected to the Greenfield Public Schools primarily by being a taxpayer in Greenfield. And, the largest percentage of our taxes in Greenfield go to the public schools. Then I started to get involved in politics. I ran a write-in campaign for city councilor and just started to get tuned in and saw in the newspaper what was happening on the school committee, was connected to Adrienne Nunez, who was the chair of the committee at that time, listened a lot and started to think I might have something that I could offer. So when a vacancy came up, I applied because I have facilitation skills. I train nonprofit leaders in meeting facilitation and facilitative leadership. I've been trained in advancing racial equity in organizations, so I understand some frameworks and tools for doing that. So I applied for the vacancy, and then I was sworn on, and I was voted on and immediately sworn in and immediately started serving, and found that it was true that even though I was just a normal person from the community, that I actually had something to offer and could play an effective role, and have been really happy with the role that I've gotten to play with the Greenfield Public Schools, and hope to continue to bring my facilitation skills and my equity expertise to the table for this good of the Greenfield students.
Thank you. Catherine, you're the last candidate to answer this question, and your time starts now.
I've been a Greenfield resident for 15 years and have 2 children in Greenfield Public Schools. I am a social worker, and so I have worked with many families in regards to issues that a lot of our kids in school are struggling with, such as domestic violence, mental illness, substance abuse. And as a social worker in that role, I understand how important caring for our kids at school and providing them with the supports that they need, and also supporting families, is to student well-being and student outcomes. So that's very important to me. Also, I was the chair of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council at my child's previous school because of my experience as a parent in special education. And because of that, I also have provided much volunteer time as a parent advocate in my spare time, and completed training through the Federation for Children with Special Needs and their Parent Center Training Institute for that reason. I hope to bring strengths from all of those categories to service on the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with Susan. The question is, how do you deal with personal preferences and biases when engaging in a committee decision-making process? Your time starts now.
How do I engage with personal preference and bias? Well, for my own bias, like I support the arts in schools. I think you have to have the courage to speak up and say what your bias is. And I haven't addressed other people that have biases, because I think I'm hopeful that when we get a new school committee, we can talk about that a little bit. I think one of the things you need on a school committee is unflinching courage to be honest with what's happening. So if someone challenges you, you have to be able to absorb that and reflect and think if that's correct. But if people, you have to have a culture on the school committee of checking each other. And that takes, I think it takes some time for teamwork to develop. I'm not sure I have too many personal biases, except I don't think politics should get involved in decisions we make about the schools. And I don't think our personal experience should cloud our ability to look at all the children in the school. We do have students with special needs. It's critically important. I've been a special ed administrator to address the needs, but there's students that don't have special needs, and their needs for whatever it is the right program from them is equally important. So hopefully we can get to that by a broad committee with different views that's honest and deliberative.
Thank you. Glenn, you're next, and your time starts now.
Great question. I think the personal preferences and biases for me falls into two categories. The personal preferences and biases of my colleagues on the school committee, and then my own personal preferences and biases. So as far as my own, I'd say I try to factor in that my perspective is not the only perspective and listen to everybody with respect. I try to put myself in situations and learning where my unaware biases and unconscious isms can be challenged, and I can learn and grow. And I try to put the needs of the students first rather than thinking about my own personal preferences and biases. As far as those of my colleagues, I think that it's important to be able to be respectful and to listen, but also at times to challenge my colleagues on the school committee when I think that their biases may be affecting decisions. So I am certainly an outspoken fighter for the students whose needs really need to be at the center of everything. It really should not be about us and our personal issues with each other.
Thank you. Catherine, you're next, and your time starts now.
I think that one of the most common things that I have heard from voters as I have talked to people during this campaign around town is their desire for the school committee to be more respectful in its manner of communicating between members and between the committee and the public. And I think that that has to be a paramount requirement for anybody who's going to be joining the school committee. And I think that committee members need to stand up for that during meetings. And that is something that I would intend to do. I think that's with that priority, as well as a commitment to following not just the letter, but the spirit of open meeting law and the rules within the committee will go a long way towards dealing with that problem. And secondly, I think personal biases on the part of the members of the committee are, they can take on an oversized role when the committee is operating without much public input. And that is a serious issue that I think needs to be addressed with the committee. I appreciate Glenn's recent motion in regards to opening up the public comment policy. And I hope that the committee will make that and much more robust efforts to acquire input from the community and act on what the townspeople care about and not just their own biases. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you're next, and your time starts now.
All right. Everyone has bias and preference, of course. One of the reasons that I wanted to run as a slate, one of the reasons that I was so excited about that was because I communicate really well with Catherine and Glenn, and I believe that we've created a culture of respect between us that I think that we can really bring into the committee. I personally have a preference for progressive ideas and equity. I'll just say it. I feel like my values are unwavering, and that is something that I have been accused of, that I may be a little too courageous, a little too brave. I do understand that we have to be open to all viewpoints, and we have to be flexible enough to work within the laws of the state as a group. But I really love to stand up for what I believe in. And in the time that I've been watching the school committee meetings, I see a real lack of kindness and empathy for each other and for the situation that everybody's in. And so I'd really like to see a group come together that can not only change the tenor of the school committee, but can reach out to the public and invite them in to be part of this new experience. A little bit more empathy and kindness. I think is in order. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with Glenn. Question is, public service in Greenfield means always having some people who publicly disagree with you. How will you handle criticism and differences of opinion? Your time starts now.
This is actually one of the exciting things about public service in Greenfield is that you get to be someone who listens to lots of people and hears lots of different perspectives. So many of us have gotten kind of stuck in our own bubbles, and we're only interacting with people that we already know and we already agree with. And there are so many opportunities when you're in public service to listen to people with different points of view and make connections with them. I have a bit of an email correspondence with a constituent who I would never have met if I wasn't a school committee member. And she certainly has shared many ideas with me that I definitely disagree with. But we have really enjoyed, I think, getting to know each other. And I think that there's a type of respect there that I think the people in the community who've reached out to me when they've disagreed with me or when they put forward an idea about masking or when we're going to open the schools or close the schools during COVID or whether there will be snow days, that I might have disagreed with people, but I could tell people up front where I was and let them know that I really valued hearing from them. And I've been really impressed by how responsive people are to that. When public servants have respect, even in disagreement, it makes a big difference to people.
Thank you. Catherine, you're next, and your time starts now.
Like Len was saying, I think in the age of Facebook and Twitter, it's all too easy to just block people that you disagree with. And we can get to living in a kind of echo chamber, which is really unfortunate because people lose the ability to just talk to each other about something that bears honest conversation. And, as a parent, having gotten involved heavily in the advocacy movement for dyslexia and the science of reading, I have been, I was initially shocked and pleasantly surprised to realize that many of the people that I shared this passion with are people who disagree with me politically on many other issues. And if I hadn't gotten involved in this, then I might not have, met those people or come to understand them. I think all parents want their children to become able to read and write and numerate proficiently at school, and that we need to keep our attention on real issues like that. And if we do that in a respectful way, then that will only benefit our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you're next, and your time starts now.
In regards to public service, I really enjoy criticism, to be honest. Of course, like all humans, it can be sometimes hard to take. As a small business owner and somebody whose job has been to help people feel really great about their bodies and what they're wearing, I've had to endure all kinds of criticism. And I don't have a need to agree with everyone. To be honest with you, the best part of campaigning for this has been connecting with the public. I've really enjoyed knocking on doors and talking to people. And I feel that connecting with the public is one of the most important parts of public service. If that's something that you're refraining from doing or afraid of doing, then you're not doing public service. And I don't think that we can create this culture of respect that we all desire and discuss without specifically trying to connect with the families and bringing them in, which is part of public service, creating spaces for them to interact with us, creating spaces where their voices can be heard.
Thank you. Susan, it's your turn, and your time starts now.
I think how you deal with differences of opinion depends on the situation at hand and your role in the situation. there are times when, in public service, you're in charge of something and someone is aggressively disagreeing and you have to take charge of the situation. And there's other times when you're speaking to a parent. I used to meet with students who wanted to drop out of school, and we'd have different opinions about the importance of education. And you have to be a really good listener and try to get the playing field level so people don't feel that one person is over another. I think that's important. I was always interested in change theory when I was in college. I took a minor in how do you take warring parties and actually get them to agree to make a change. So it's been an interest of mine through my career. I think it takes some talent. There's no question in our country, in our community, in our schools, we have parents with extremely different points of view. And everybody in a leadership position has to develop these skills of listening and negotiating and bringing people to consensus. I'm a little scared of a school committee where everybody goes on thinking the same way. I think you really need diverse people with different points of view and backgrounds. And that's how you get a healthy school committee.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with Catherine. The question is, what are your thoughts regarding the recent revisions to the school committee's policy for public comment, such as granting the chair the ability to extend the public comment segment by an additional 15 minutes and allowing the public comment to extend beyond the scope of the agenda? And Catherine, your time starts now.
I think that this change to the public comment policy is essential. When you have a policy that stifles speech about anything that's not already on a predetermined agenda, then you are operating in an environment where the committee doesn't know what the community cares about. And I was disappointed to hear comments from certain members of the committee about what sort of things are or aren't under the committee's purview, and therefore whether someone from the public should speak about them, because I think that puts an unfair burden on the members of the public to know things that they, of course, don't know. And secondly, I think that is a little bit of hot potato that politicians sometimes like to play, and not being responsible for something. When you think about it, pretty much everything related to the Greenfield Public Schools has something to do with the performance of the superintendent, the budget, policy, things that are under the committee's purview. And I think the only way for the committee to really be effective and to be serving the community in the best possible way is to be not just allowing the communities to speak, but actually actively seeking out their input and then putting it into action. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you're next, and your time starts now.
Thank you. My thoughts regarding the public comment policy, I went and made public comments. I felt truly compelled to do so because in reality, who are the public? They're your helpers. They're really the people that are there to help you understand what's going on. And if they cannot discuss what they need to discuss because it's not on the agenda, then really you're missing important information. And it's not just the public comment policy. It's about making the meetings more accessible to the public overall. They happen at dinner time. These parents can't participate at dinner time when they have to deal with their children. There isn't childcare. So I think not only, the public comment policy was a start, but I think changes also need to be made to have it live streamed all of the time. Parents need to be able to make public comment via live stream, or it needs to be held in different places where it's at a more equitable time. So I think that the policy change was a really great step in the right direction. I think it's a beginning step. It felt uncomfortable making public comment to them. It felt like they didn't want to hear it. And that's something that the public feels when the vibe is, why are you here wasting our time? That's the vibe that I got. I didn't like that. It felt uncomfortable. So if the public comes and tells you we're uncomfortable making comment with you, we aren't getting our issues heard because they're not on the agenda, and we're met with disinterest, then let's circle it back around to that public service question. Then you're not doing the public service that you need to be doing, because that's a very important part.
Thank you. Susan, you're next, and your time starts now.
I think bringing up the public comment policy was a good first step, but it's just a first step. Historically, when you would say you have to speak to items on the agenda, we'd be meeting in person and a copy of the agenda was passed out to everyone. I've never understood why we tell people you have to speak to the agenda and then we don't tell them what's on the agenda. So I think it's good we brought it up. But the other thing is our agenda, in my opinion, should always say topics for the next meeting. School committee members don't even have a way, if it's not on the agenda, to have a discussion about what we think is important individually to have on the agenda. But there are other ways we need to increase communication. One is to have hearing sessions on different topics of importance. It can't all happen just at school committee meetings. If you have an hour for public comment, then the school committee, when it's doing business meetings, goes into 10, 11 o'clock, and you really can't function well. So it has to be more thinking on how to make this work. I will say that I think it's important to bring it up. I've been very uncomfortable. It's always uncomfortable to me that you can't respond to some things that are logical, like, are we going to take a trip out of state this year? And you advise me, attorneys, not to say anything for different reasons. So I think it needs work, but I started this session by saying one of the reasons I'm running again is I want to see a different culture on the school committee, and this is part of what I'd like to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn, you close this out, and your time starts now.
I was really pleased to get to bring a new policy on public comment to the full committee in my role as chair of the policy subcommittee, because I had seen people come to our meetings and want to talk to us and be told, you can't talk to us about that because it's not on the agenda. And I know as a gay man what it's like to not be on the agenda. There are many communities who realize that their issues and concerns aren't going to be put on the agenda. And if it's not on the agenda and you're not allowed to then speak about it, then how meaningful is public comment really? There certainly are many times when items on the agenda, we need feedback from the community on those as well. But what aren't we talking about is as important as what we are and have already decided to talk about. So I'm really pleased with that. And I'm also really pleased that we did extend it, give the chair the capacity to extend it an extra 15 minutes. In the wake of the George Floyd killing, we had a lot of people coming to school committee wanting to talk to us about equity. And they were told in some cases, well, if you're going to speak up for equity, then we've already said it, and then we need to move on because we don't have time. So I think that in special situations, the committee absolutely needs to be able to extend public comment so that people can speak to what's on their minds.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with Elizabeth. The question is, what do you think is the most effective way to keep our enrollment numbers up in Greenfield Public Schools? And your time starts now.
I'm sorry, did you say the most effective way?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you. The most effective way to keep our numbers up? Well, it's a real simple thing. I think we start just at the beginning of the administrative level. Because parents are saying very clearly that they're not getting the information that they need. And people might think, oh, well, that's, they should just Google things, or they should just go find it out on their own. But parents are calling the school and not receiving phone calls back. I thought maybe there was no elementary school. That's how bad it was. I would not have been able to enroll my child if a mom on Facebook hadn't made it happen for me. That's how difficult it was. And I'm not the only one. I met a parent the other day who enrolled their kindergartner in Deerfield because They couldn't get them enrolled in GPS. They could not get a phone call back. You answer the phone, it voicemail's full. You go to the website, there isn't the information that you need. So step one is just to correct administrative issues right off the bat and make sure that it's welcoming. Because I've called other districts to inquire about school for my child, and it's been a wonderful experience. They've been welcoming and open and answer the phone and invite me on tours. And I've received nothing like that from GPS. So that's step one.
Thank you. Susan, you're next, and your time starts now.
Well, the situation I'm hearing about today certainly concerns me. The phones have to be answered and parents have to be able to get their questions heard and be able to enroll. That's disturbing to hear. I think people leave the district for different reasons. Sometimes you work in Northampton and that's where you want to go with your child. Sometimes you leave because you're disgusted with the schools. People have left because they find that another school offers theater and we don't offer theater. So I think you have to get a sense of why people are leaving. Is it specific grades, specific schools? You can study that and get data. But when you have active connection with parents and they're engaged in the programs, they're supporting your programs, people generally enjoy staying in their community. We've had so much turnover that it's hard for me to imagine that any school really has a strong culture because of just the disruption of the last year, which some of it is not because of a school system, it's just a situation. I have great hope we can pull this together. We need to clarify our values, engage our parents, have better communication, develop the culture that we once had where people really liked being here and they were glad to come to work and kids were happy and we had our issues, but they were resolved and we had much less choice out. So I think it's possible. We need to refocus. 3 ways to fix a school: focus, focus, and focus.
Thank you. Glenn, you're next, and your time starts now.
I think it's simple but difficult. The simple part is if we have excellent public schools in Greenfield, people will keep their kids in the public schools in Greenfield. And we have so many excellent staff. We are so blessed with such wonderful teachers and staff. I hear about wonderful stories about them all of the time. I think it goes back to some of the issues that I discussed at the beginning, which is staffing. We have to have adequate staff, adequate numbers of paraprofessionals so that teachers can do their jobs. We have to have excellent professional development so that the teachers are all doing the best practices and everybody's rowing together. Likewise, the curriculum, we need to have a top of class curriculum that is widespread and implemented in a strategic way throughout the district. And we need to be addressing issues of equity and culture and bringing the students together as well. And we can do that to the extent we can with the resources we have with the strategic plan. So I'm very excited about the superintendent's plan to start working with us to develop a strategic plan. And I think that will take us a long way towards being the school system that retains the students.
Thank you. Catherine, you close this out and your time starts now.
Like Elizabeth, I've experienced some of Greenfield's difficulties with its basic organization and communication, and I think that is not uncommon. Like many other parents, sometimes like my best source of information is Facebook groups of other parents, and that's not the way that it should be in the district. But as I have been knocking on doors, talking with voters, I have maybe been hearing things that the district has not about why parents choose school choice, charter schools, homeschooling, and private schools. And if the committee were gathering that information, they would hear concerns about poor student outcomes, outdated curriculum and programming, racism and inequity issues in our schools, and problems with special education services. Likewise, with teachers, I have asked them, like I asked those parents, whether anybody had ever inquired with them about why they decided to leave Greenfield schools or not come in the first place. And I think if the committee were asking those questions and gathering that data, then they would hear issues with low pay, lack of support, leading to significant safety issues for them at school, and a lack of direction from constantly changing administrators. So I hope that the committee will take it upon itself to ask the question, and I think they'll find the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with Susan. And that question is, what is your position or opinion on transparency within the school committee? And don't forget to unmute. Your time starts now.
I absolutely think we should be transparent. I'm not supportive of proposals coming forward that have already been decided outside of the school committee. I don't think that's fair to the school committee or appropriate, and I don't think it's fair to the public. So I think we should be transparent. From time to time, I've advocated we meet more than once a month. There's certain things we can't talk about, but most things we can talk about. And I think some of that may need consultant help on how to address difficult issues that make you uncomfortable. But basically, we represent the public, and the public should know what we're thinking. I still think we need a committee that has different points of view. We're a deliberative body, and that's how we make the best decisions for a community that has different points of view. And we do that best when we say what we think, and we're honest, and we listen to each other. And I think that's how you're open and transparent. I think we should say how much money we receive from grants, what's in them. We should post that information. There's nothing about our school district that should be withheld from the public, because it's a public system. That's how I feel, and that's how I try to act. And I also think we need to have good minutes, which we're lax on that at the moment also for our subcommittees.
Thank you. Glenn, you're next, and your time starts now.
I'm a strong advocate for transparency within the school committee. As I said in my opening statement, this isn't just about kind of the letter of open meeting law and following the rules, but it's about actually believing that the public needs to hear us deliberating in real time, that we work for you, and it's our job to not be doing secret backroom deals. Sometimes people may not have intended to, but there have been many documented incidents of school committee members speaking to each other on email about items that really should have been discussed in public at a school committee meeting. And I have actually brought forward motions when I thought that a meeting may have been scheduled inappropriately with less than 48 hours notice for the public to attend, and got the school committee to agree that we would refer that matter to our own attorney for recommendations of what to do next. Unfortunately, that, even though the committee voted favorably for that, that never took place. But it's the kind of thing that I do speak up for, even when my committee members, I think, sometimes would prefer I wasn't so vocal about it. I also believe that all school committee members should do the required training on open meeting law and charting the course that's part of Massachusetts law.
Thank you. Catherine, you're next, and your time starts now.
I think that transparency starts with the committee making it as possible, as absolutely possible, for the public to see and hear committee meetings. At the present time, the committee's own website is still wrong on saying that committee meetings are being held fully remotely still. It's not true. And a person should be able to go to the committee's website and find accurate information about when and how they can attend a committee meeting. Likewise, I support Elizabeth's comment in regards to live streaming meetings. That needs to be accessible for parents who are not able to leave home for whatever reason or wherever they are to get to a meeting, as well as broadcasting and eliminating technical issues with that. And as Glenn was saying, I think that every school committee member should take it upon themselves to fully understand and respect the open meeting law. I have concerns about how that has gone in the past with this school committee. And that is something that I think should be prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you're next, and your time starts now.
Thank you. I'm so glad that somebody asked this question, because this is what is the most frustrating thing for me. I know that the school committee has a public perception problem. Whether they want to admit that they do or not, they do. The problem is that people don't always know what the school committee is talking about. Not everybody is as well versed as they are in issues regarding budgets and grants and so on. So when things happen, when they cannot share certain things with the public, that's fine. I understand. But they need to say so, and they need to say why, and they need to post things, and they need to make it clear to the public, we cannot talk about this because throw a little nugget in there about why. There's no reason not to. When you don't, the public turns into a rumor mill, and Greenfield gets dramatic on Facebook, and it turns into this committee member doesn't care, and they didn't say this, and on and on and on, and it becomes a big problem. There's no reason why they cannot explain to the public in slightly more accessible terms why they cannot discuss what's going on. And then if they can discuss it, it needs to be fully transparent all the time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with them updating their website to explain these things. They could do it for every meeting. It's a simple technical issue that they could solve.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with Glenn. The question is, in what ways could the school committee increase engagement and input from more residents and more diverse residents within the community on important upcoming school committee decisions?
Excellent question. I think I've answered part of it already in terms of wanting the community to be able to come to us with public comment on any item that's within our purview, not just items that are on the agenda. I also think we do need to move towards a hybrid system where people can come and do public comment with us in person, but also be able to do it online on Zoom. There's no reason. Our teachers were teaching in hybrid at various times throughout the last year, and we certainly should be able to do it as a school committee. I also think there are opportunities for the school committee to have certain listening only sessions where we go to different communities, different neighborhoods in Greenfield, hold a public session where the only item on the agenda is public comment, and really listen to what people have to say. So I think that there's a lot of room for improvement for us, and I want to be a part of making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, you're next, and your time starts now.
I think that in order for the committee to do more than just talk about issues like equity, there need to be changes in how the committee operates in order to allow the public access and to get input from the public. I think listening sessions are an excellent idea. And I think the committee needs to consider having its own meetings, and if not then at least listening sessions in places in town where residents are more likely to have difficulty with issues like transportation and childcare, and also take steps to eliminate those because they are systemic barriers to people who are already disadvantaged from providing their input to the committee. And secondly, I think the committee should also make all of their documents and things that they review at committee meetings available online so that parents can and other community members can access them asynchronously. When you're talking about people in the community who work nights or who are otherwise unavailable during the regular committee meeting hours, it's impossible for them to see by watching a YouTube video what exactly it was that the committee was reviewing and talking about. So I hope the committee will take steps like this to be more open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you're next, and your time starts now.
I love that so many of the questions are about engaging with the public. It hasn't really been discussed, but school committees are like powder kegs all over the country right now. And I don't think that that extends to Greenfield, but I don't think that the public should have their issues bottled up. I think that they should be allowed to express them. I think listening sessions are important. Once again, the meetings are at 6 p.m., dinner time. Families have dinner time with lots of kids. Every parent has told me, this is what I need. I ask, what do you need? How do you want to go to the committee? We need childcare. We need live streaming. They need to be able to pop in their earbuds, make dinner, watch their kids, and stay up on what's going on. I've been told that's very, very important. They need to be able to drop off their kids if they can attend in person. They need to know that it's happening in person. I feel like there's a real disconnect about what is available contact-wise for the school committee. I was once told by a city official that the school committee had a Facebook page. They don't have a Facebook page. Like, you can Google their information. And it's amazing to me that I mentioned this to school committee members and they seem surprised. Like, you should know how people can access you other than your personal state email, I think. So I think that they could do quite a lot, and we've already discussed it in many ways.
Thank you. Susan, you'll close out this topic, and your time starts now.
I just want to say, if you have the misimpression, the school committee doesn't run their own website. They don't post their own meetings. These are secretarial administrative services that happen in the central office. There was a meeting recently. I wanted to see if it was posted. It was somewhere, but it wasn't on the school calendar. I couldn't find the. I mean, we have trouble too on the school committee. This is an administrative issue that we need to pick up because it represents us, but it's not something individually that we do as school committee members. I think we need to have hearing sessions. I think we need to have a liaison to every school. I've recommended that before, someone that can sit on PTA meetings. And I think we do have liaisons to certain groups, but not to a lot of important groups that take place in the town that represent different factions and different interests. Historically, when you would come to a meeting, there would be an information packet available. It's really hard for anyone to understand the budget if you're not seeing it except in tiny print on a screen. You need to have time to look at it. But the biggest flaw, what we need to change, is we're not following our own policy about a two-step process on important issues. You bring it up, you discuss it, you don't act on it then. You give time for people to have input. You come back, you review all the input, and you make a decision. We haven't been acting that way, but that's our policy, and that's one of the things I'd like to change on the next term, is getting us back to where we're a thinking committee that has time for input on the decisions we're making.
Thank you. Our last question begins with Catherine. And the question is, how does a school committee balance the need to respond to the taxpayer burden with the need to provide a quality education? Catherine, your time starts now.
Well, I think that the school committee, of course, should take it upon itself to take advantage of every opportunity within our town funds, as well as funding available from state and federal sources, and the grant funding that no school district can do without in the present day and age. I would like the public to consider also the long-term impact of what happens if we don't make significant investments in things like a wholehearted investment in updated literacy curriculum and professional development in our district and other supports that need to happen in order to get our kids reading and writing proficiently. These things are not just statistics, they are real children who suffer on just about every life outcome when they don't get what they need at school. And that has long-ranging impacts on not just those children, but our families within the district and our community as a whole. So I support putting our money where our mouth is and supporting our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you're next, and your time starts now.
One of the things that I noticed, I met so many people who said, I'm not going to vote because I don't have kids in the district. And I said over and over and over again, you're a taxpayer. Where do you think your taxes go? They go to the district. So I think that the public needs to be reminded sometimes that their taxes are a long-term investment in the youth of the city. Where do we want to see our young people in 5-10 years? How do we want to create sort of a long-term experience of, having good students all the time going in and out? We don't want to have children who cannot read and who can't do the things that they need to do. I mean, honestly. So I feel like it really comes down to communication in the end. I think that the school committee can communicate not just with other districts, but more with the state. I had people from other districts come up to me and say, hey, I have a whole list of websites for you. If you get on the school committee, here's a whole bunch of grants that I've used in my district, and we'd love to talk to you and work with you and communicate with you. And is that happening currently? I don't know, but I think it should. That's a way to get more money involved.
Thank you. Susan, you're next, and your time starts now.
Greenfield is a city school system. I think we're the newest city. It's really different than a town school system. Our funding structure is different. That's why you need somebody on the school committee that really understands municipal finance for city schools. We get our money from the city. If we really want to have a strong budget, we have got to have close communication with the city to understand what we're doing, what our data is, why we need things. And something I would do is I'd like to have the budget committee meet quarterly with the city's finance committee so we can talk about school finance. If the city doesn't give us the budget we want, we get the budget that the city votes for us. So communicating with the city and being clear about what we're doing with ourselves, how much money is for each program. How do we make sure, how much money do we need so teachers have the materials they need? What does the reading program cost? We have to do that if we want to have a strong budget, and we have to have savings because we have nowhere to go in the city if we can't go back to the voters. So there's a lot of pieces of this that we need to understand. What we need on the school committee is a really strong standing budget committee that can answer questions for the school committee and work with the city. And I can't stress enough that that's really essential. There was a directive that our standing budget committee not meet unless there was something specific. I don't agree with that at all. I like to see our standing committees get back into active function. That's the best way to serve our district.
Thank you. Glenn, you will close this part out, and your time starts now.
An excellent question about how we balance the need to respond to the taxpayer burden with the need to provide a quality education. People are really hurting in Greenfield, and it's hard with the local taxes being so high to ask them to give more. I don't know the answer to that, but I can say as a school committee member, we can make strategic use of the funding we do have. I think investing in curriculum and in school leadership can really make a difference in terms of how far we make that dollar stretch. But it's absolutely outrageous that our schools are funded primarily from real estate taxes. The best predictor for student outcomes is the zip code your child is born into. And that is so wrong in the United States of America, and in particular in Massachusetts, where we have written into our Constitution that every child is has a right to an education, the best quality education, regardless of their socioeconomic status. And that's why I really think we need school committee members who won't just work within the budget we have, but will also find ways to advocate for more funding from the state and federal government. In some ways, the most important item related to this topic is on the ballot, not this year, but in November 2022, when the Fair Share Amendment is up, which would tax millionaires and billionaires and make sure that our schools get their fair share of the funding that they deserve, so every student has a quality education.
Thank you. We will finish with closing statements in reverse order of opening statements, starting with Glenn. You have 2 minutes, starting now.
Thank you, League of Women Voters, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I also want to thank everyone who has put themselves out there to run for school committee. You have to care a lot to be willing to run for election and to serve. As many of you know, I have been running a cooperative campaign with Elizabeth Deneve and Catherine Martini. It's been a pleasure to work with them. Their passion for education and their commitment both to their own children and to all of Greenfield students has been remarkable. You can learn more about our cooperative campaign at voteforbettergreenfieldschools.org. Working together, Elizabeth, Catherine, and I can bring our shared values, respect, transparency, equity, and community engagement to the Greenfield School Committee. Respect because we have to model for young people the respect we expect them to give to themselves and each other. Transparency because we should have nothing to hide and we work for you. Equity because every decision we make has implications for students of color, students with disabilities, LGBTQ+ students, and students of lower socioeconomic status. And community engagement because we need everyone sharing their thoughts so we can come up with the best strategies to improve our schools. We are at a pivotal time for public education, coming out of a pandemic, wrestling with our country's history of racism, trying to prevent environmental collapse, widening gaps between the rich and the rest of us. Public education has never been more needed or more strained. We are going to need to attract and retain excellent teachers, engage them with a comprehensive, strategic, high-quality professional development program, provide leadership development opportunities for school principals, and create a climate and culture for learning that allows all students to thrive. To tackle these challenges and to prepare students for the challenges ahead, I ask for your vote on November 2nd for re-election to the Greenfield School Committee.
Thank you. Elizabeth, you're next. 2 minutes, start now.
Thank you. Thank you, League of Women Voters, for this forum. It was a wonderful experience, and a special thank you to the public for attending. It has been wonderful to hear and answer everyone's questions. I want to impart something to you. I want you to know that I want to do this. I'm not feeling sad or apathetic about this. I have the energy and the desire. And I think it's time to try something new. And I'm asking not just that you vote for me on November 2nd, but also for the entire slate. I specifically chose to run with Glenn and Catherine because our values are aligned. I have spoken about issues today regarding student retention, public needs, and the committee members appear surprised. I don't know why. They should know these things. They should be plugged into community issues and not checked out. It has been said that the administration isn't the purview of the committee. I understand. And I understand that finance and budget is extremely important. This is understood. We all understand this. But we need members in the school committee who can think outside the box, who are willing to interact with the public and work not just for the budget, but for community respect, for equity, for transparency, to work as a group, to change the tenor of the school committee and make it more respectful for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, your time is 2 minutes and it starts now.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this forum and to everyone who is here tonight watching. What I want you to know about me as a candidate is that I believe in the values of transparency, equity, and respect. Like many Greenfield voters, I want the school committee to actively seek out community input center equity in all of its decisions, and be respectful between elected members and the public. As a parent, I am a passionate advocate of literacy, and I am devoted to doing everything that I can to help our schools improve student outcomes. As a union worker, and also coming from a family of teachers, I'm committed to giving our teachers the respect and resources that they need to be respectful. I am running as a slate with Glenn and Elizabeth because we have a set of shared values that I believe will result in a sea change in the Greenfield School Committee and ultimately benefit our schools and our students. Thank you for voting for us on November 2nd.
Thank you. Susan, you are last, and you have 2 minutes for your closing statement, and your time starts now.
I want to first thank you for the forum. And I'd like to say a word about Daryl Asensa, who isn't here. And I'd like to say that she is a UMass professional. She has been on the school committee before, and she works supervising education in a different city school. She's extremely knowledgeable about how to make schools excellent. That's her job in the Department of Ed at UMass. I'm sorry she wasn't here tonight. I've given my whole life to education. If I'm reelected, I will continue to do my best to fight for things I think that are important, which certainly includes literacy and equity. Knowing how to put these things into motion is terribly important. We can all talk about great ideas, we have to do this or that, but if you don't understand how the mechanics of a city school system works, it's really hard to make things happen. We have a new superintendent coming in. I have great hopes for the district. We've had a lot of turmoil. She's coming from a different state, which means her time to learn what are the guidelines, what are the laws, what do school districts do. There's a lot of sources for that, but having a couple people on the school committee that actually are industry professionals and can be helpful, I think is extremely important. I'm not so myself as a voter enamored with slates. I hope voters look at everyone as individuals. You need a well-rounded committee with different skills and interests to have a really fabulous school system. And we need goals, and we need plans, and we need to make sure we have the resources that our teachers and students need. If I'm reelected, I will continue to do my best to study everything that comes up and advocate for all the children. And I hope everyone goes to vote, because there's really nothing more important than your public education system.
Thank you. A big thank you to the candidates for their willingness to participate in our forum. We wish you all good luck with the election, and thank you to the Zoom and live stream audiences for attending and learning. A recording of this forum will be available on the Greenfield Community Television website, gctv.org, YouTube channel, and Facebook page. We'll be sure to share that information. Many thanks to Nick Ring, GCTV's Executive Director, for his time and technical wizardry. The Greenfield election is November 2nd. The deadline to register to vote in the election has passed, and the deadline to request a vote by mail or absentee ballot is 5 p.m. on the 4th business day before the election, which is next Wednesday, October 27th. The League thanks the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts for the use of its Zoom account. And thank you again for joining us. And remember, vote on November 2nd. Good night.